It's Friday, May 13th.
Yeah.
Jespo and Infamous with you. Are you like a Friday the 13th guy at all? Are you a superstitious guy at all, or not so much?
Well, now that you said it, I was like, I hope he doesn't say it.
No, but
it's
come
in
on.
The Gremlins.
It was obvious. It was implied.
Yeah.
No, now if you say the Gremlins, that's like saying what's the is it Beetlejuice that Candyman? Is that
three times.
Look in the mirror and say Candyman.
I said it once.
Or of course the Bard's famous play that must not be named on stage. Although somebody recently did that and named the play that must not be named on stage, and something either did or didn't happen. More reputable and in-depth reporting coming up in this next hour on Real Talk. We're happy to have you here. We've got Griwkowsky and Graham Thomson joining us, veteran Alberta Legislature correspondents, coming up in just a minute. And then the much-awaited roundtable with the Strategists, Zain Velji, Stephen Carter, Corey Hogan. The three of them are going to be joining us in about a half hour's time for their return to the Real Talk roundtable. Now, typically, you're going, where the hell is Supriya Dwivedi? Typically, Supriya would be with us for her regular spot on Fridays, but she's taking a couple weeks off, couple weeks to herself. We figured that, the fact that she's got like 6 full-time jobs with a bunch of universities and strategy firms, and she's a mom and a partner, that she could step away from Real Talk every once in a while. So we hope that she has a fabulous and relaxing weekend, and we'll be checking in again with Supriya probably in the next couple of weeks once she's back. There's a lot going on in the cryptocurrency space right now. There's a lot going on with Bitcoin, and a lot of you are reaching out to us going, hey, what do you make of all this? Because you hear us talk about Bitcoin every single morning. So Bitcoin, there's been this broader stock sell-off in the U.S. last week, and it sent the cryptocurrency market into a frenzy, right? And it saw it drop by about 10%. And the world's largest digital currency by market value down another 5%. Just a short time ago, we're talking about Bitcoin. So you've got the blue chip Dow Jones Industrial Average losing 1,000 points yesterday. You got the NASDAQ falling 5%. These are the worst single-day drops in a couple of years. People go, well, what's causing this? And what does this all mean? And most importantly, what does the future look like? Nobody knows. But if you want to ask human beings who have a pretty good finger on the pulse of it, we recommend Bitcoin. You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website, ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Plus, of course, Trash Talk coming up in an hour from now as we wrap up our week of shows presented by Local Environmental. It's I don't know, I haven't showed you all the Trash Talks this week, John, but the ones that you did see, it's a very politically heavy Trash Talk this week again.
People are fired up.
People get all fired up. Sometimes I thought that there might be some hockey trash talks. I thought that there might be some more frivolous
What a game.
trash talks. Yeah, last night, depending on where you're talking, my sister and her partner, Mara, I know that they're paying keen attention to the Leafs Bolts series, which is going to go 7, which is amazing. You always love to see a game 7, unless you're the type of fan, the sports fan that likes the guarantees. And if you're in our neck of the woods, you were pretty excited, I think, to see the Oilers beat the LA Kings in LA last night in a must-win scenario, a game 6 that forces game 7 on home ice as well. So that's big for hockey fans. That's going to be going down Saturday night. We've been paying attention to a bunch of stories internationally, including the killing of Palestinian-American journalist. Yesterday we talked about it, Shireen Abu Akleh. Check this out, an update. This is a video posted by Al Jazeera English. She was a reporter, a correspondent internationally for Al Jazeera for a lot of years, almost 25 years, and was watched and known and respected by millions of people who are mourning her loss for many, many reasons. Number one, the fact simply that journalists were targeted. Keep in mind, a fellow journalist was shot in the back right beside her. Shireen Abu Akleh shot in the head, killed instantly. People that were with her are saying it was Israeli Defense Forces that did this. And we talked yesterday about the criticism that Western media is facing in so-called whitewashing this story. Well, what you're seeing right now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'll describe it for our podcast audience, is the Israeli army essentially beating, I don't know what the other word for it is, they're throwing punches, they're swinging batons, they're beating the crowds that are carrying the casket of this Al Jazeera journalist. This in the occupied West Bank, in occupied East Jerusalem. That's where you're seeing this video, which was posted just a short time ago by Al Jazeera. So obviously disgraceful, obviously demanding not just condemnation and statements from international journalism outlets, but also from elected officials and, quite frankly, allies of Israel. And so people will, including, I'm sure, audience members of Real Talk, will be keeping an eye on this story and demanding, what would you call it, accountability? I mean, look at this. This is infuriating to watch, the casket almost falling as supporters, you have to assume friends, family members, and, of course, mourning members of the public are carrying the casket with the body of the former Al Jazeera journalist in occupied East Jerusalem. This is a developing story as we're speaking. On the home front, and does it feel almost trivial to mention this back to that? I mean, obviously Palestine and Israel and this violence and the killing of a journalist and the targeting of a journalist, and then I'm going to transition over to talk about Twitter and Elon Musk, and everyone's just going to roll their eyes. But this it's a significant development, and it is a story we've been talking about. Christopher Boozy yesterday, fascinating on the show, wasn't he? The founder of Bot Sentinel, explaining to us. I have some pretty basic questions, like what's the difference between a bot and a troll? And how do bots and trolls influence or even shape some of the political developments or even elections on Twitter? And Boozy got into it, and the guy's got a fascinating insight based on this website that he developed. You can go to botsentinel.com, and you can kind of audit anyone's Twitter handle. It's interesting. You can run through your own and see how you'd score. You want the lowest score possible. I think I scored a 4% yesterday, which he said to me, "You are not a bot," which was good to know. But if your score is up 50, 75%, you're a bot. So Boozy's developed this. It's caught a lot of people's attention. You know what we didn't talk to him about yesterday?
What?
He's done a lot of studies and a lot of research into organized campaigns, like pile-on campaigns, if you want to call them hate campaigns, against celebrities, for example, like Meghan Markle. And he's been able to break down the data, break down the numbers, really interesting stuff. So Christopher told us yesterday he's not convinced. He doesn't think that this Elon Musk Twitter deal is even going to go through, the $44 billion deal. And check this out. The BBC reporting this morning, along with basically everybody else.
And there it is.
The world's richest man is putting the Twitter deal on hold over fake account details. He says he queried the number of fake or spam accounts on Twitter. He said he was waiting for information now, supporting the calculation that spam or fake accounts do indeed represent less than 5% of the users. So what happens if he finds out that fake or spam accounts are 15 or 20 or 30% of users?
Yeah, what's the number we're needed here?
Does it give him the out? I don't know. Under the terms of the deal, I mean, who really cares about this to the general public? But if either Twitter or Elon Musk walk away from the deal, they've got to pay a termination fee of $1 billion.
Oh, my.
I don't think either of them are going to sweat that. Who cares? But it's interesting. Twitter reported more than 2 weeks ago that fake accounts, says Twitter, represent fewer than 5% of daily active users during the first 3 months of this year at least. So that's a story that we'll keep an eye on. Our Real Talk audience, those that sign up for and participate in the question of the week every week presented by Y Station, you basically told us this, at least a whole bunch of you, almost half of you yesterday, and we ran through those results. If you saw them on yesterday's show or listened to the podcast, you know already. A whole bunch of you said, I don't think this deal is going to go through. I think this is just a big boondoggle. And it would appear that some of you might be right. We're going to talk provincial politics in just a second with two people in the province of Alberta that have made it, virtually accessible and understandable, the political workings of the legislature for hundreds of thousands of people. And that's why Catherine Griwkowsky, Graham Thomson have such respect. Looking forward to talking to them. First, I want to remind you, when we talk about real life every day, a big part of that, for many of you, I know, is health. And not just your own health, but the health and well-being. And that could involve the home care for your loved ones. And that's what Infinity Healthcare does. You can check them out online right now at infinity-8.ca. They're in the business of dependable, reputable, reliable home care. And that means that they work with families to find the best home care provider possible. It also means that they're always hiring. So if you go to career opportunities at infinity-8.ca, you can see what they have available for licensed practical nurses. Are you an LPN looking to make a change? Maybe you want to ease back on some of your responsibilities, the daily grind, and move to a different service provision model. Maybe you're a healthcare aide or a customer care navigator. Maybe you're intrigued by the job of an Infinity Healthcare ambassador. You can find them all under the sponsors tab on our website. You know, Kubi Energy is hiring as well. They told us specifically to let you know that they're looking for talented installers, they're looking for electricians, and in particular right now, they're hiring a lead structural engineer. That sounds to me like a pretty good job. If you're a lead structural engineer.
Can you put lead in front of my title, please?
Lead technical producer.
Please, it just sounds more important.
You are the lead technical producer.
Amazing.
You're also the only technical producer.
Changing my business card today.
Which you're both the senior and junior technical producer. But the lead structural engineer at Kubi Energy, you're not going to be at a big, boring corporation where you're a cog in the machine. You're some employee number. There's no personal angle to any of this. You're contributing to the development of clean energy in Canada. You can learn more about that job. Give them a call. Check them out online at kubienergy.ca. And Athabasca University is Canada's online university. Not just that, though. There's a reason why about 40,000 Canadians trust their post-secondary experience and trust their self-betterment to Athabasca University. It's because it also has an amazing reputation across the country as a research center. If you'd like to learn more about that, including what Athabasca University is doing on the research front and how that could impact your studies or provide opportunity for you, I invite you to check out their world-class accredited online programs and courses today, right now, at athabascau.ca. Well, we're going to talk provincial politics today. We're going to talk federal politics today. If you're listening to this or watching this from Western Canada, you'll probably be particularly interested in what our next two guests have to say, both of them covering the Alberta Legislature as correspondents. Catherine Griwkowsky, the Alberta Legislature reporter for Alberta Today. Graham Thomson, a longtime columnist for the Edmonton Journal, now writing for CBC, iPolitics, and Alberta Views magazine. To the both of you, good morning. It's great to see both of your faces. It's been a little while. Catherine, it seems like we've got the federal Conservative leadership race going on right now. We've got Jagmeet Singh being harassed in Ontario. A lot of people are paying attention to the national news front, to the federal political front, but there's a lot going on right now that strikes me as flying under the radar when it comes to Alberta politics. Do you get the sense the same thing is happening with regards to how the general public is perceiving it? Are you having to work a little harder to remind people that there's a lot going on at the legislature in Edmonton?
Oh, it's what I do. It's what I do. I'm always going to talk about the underreported things under the dome, and of course, it's not just a federal Conservative leadership going on. There's the leadership review. The ballots are in. They're being counted for the fate of Jason Kenney as party leader right now.
Yeah, well, let's get into that. And Catherine, to you first, and then Graham, over to you. You've just written about this as well. But like you said, Catherine, the mail-in ballots, the deadline has hit, and now they're being reviewed and processed, and we're expecting an announcement 5 days from now on the 18th. But there's a lot of questions swirling around right now, whether or not this thing is even close to legitimate. Can you take us into the story?
Yeah, well, part of what the party has done to try and show transparency is they have a live stream right now at Deloitte. They are showing the ballot verification process. But a lot of the questions are around the fact that they shifted from an in-person vote in Red Deer to these mail-in ballots. And they cut off the sales deadline. Some people who couldn't make it through Red Deer would have loved to have participated through mail-in ballot, but they said, nope, if you weren't signed up by as a party member by the date for Red Deer, then you're not getting into this mail-in ballot. But the history there is still an active, ongoing RCMP investigation into the previous UCP leadership and party merger vote. So I'm sure Graham can speak to this as well, but there's an ongoing investigation, so there's some skepticism around this entire process. And there was changes under Bill 81 and other amendments to make it so I think it was up to 422 memberships could be purchased without actually knowing that you bought them. So the UCP rules say you have to have an ID along with that, but there's some questions over that process as well.
And like you said, everybody's talking about this, including based on the great reporting by Mark Villani at CTV down in Calgary. Graham, you've probably seen this story, a Calgary family going on the record saying they didn't purchase UCP memberships, and they're speaking out now after their names have appeared on a leadership voting list. It sort of seems to be the same old tricks, Graham, like Catherine alluded to, right? 2017 all over again.
Well, there's certainly a lot of questions about legitimacy of this vote. Now, the party is saying, look, there may be some glitches here and there, but anything that's not toward, anything untoward will be put aside. In fact, as we've mentioned, there's this live feed right now from the UCP. It's really boring to watch. It's a room at Deloitte. There are the scrutineers of this vote, and you've got people there ripping open the envelopes. And if it looks like a legitimate ballot, it goes into a green box. If it's not legitimate or any sort of questions, put into a red box. So they're trying to show that it's actually an open and accountable vote. But there's a lot of questions. Yes, it's been alluded to what happened in 2017. Kenney, of course, defeated Brian Jean in that leadership race, but there was some questions about voter fraud, and that's being still investigated by the RCMP. You also have this complaint this week from Brian Jean that there was 4,000 bulk memberships of the UCP bought by half a dozen credit cards. And Jean is blaming the Kenney campaign, saying this looks really fishy. The party is saying, nope, everything's above board. But then also this whole vote, you had the UCP executive seeming to tilt the playing field in Kenney's favor by changing the vote, as Catherine mentioned, from an in-person vote in Red Deer with 15,000 people signed up to go there and vote. And it seemed that Kenney could lose that because a lot of people were very angry at him, were willing to drive to Red Deer to vote against him. They changed the rules at the last minute to a mail-in ballot as opposed to going there in person. And so even the party president, Cynthia Moore, before Kenney made a speech back in April to kick off this balloting process, was very much in favor of Jason Kenney. It's almost like Elections Canada running an election, but holding a news conference in favor of Justin Trudeau during the election campaign. That's the parallel that's been drawn by some of Kenney's detractors. So there is questions right now about the fairness. Now, of course, look, if Kenney loses on Wednesday, all those complaints will go away because a loss will be considered to be, that's it, it's done, it was a fair vote. The question is if Kenney wins this vote. And right now, I got to say, the feeling I've got from people in the party, even those who do not like Kenney, is that he will survive on Wednesday with something like 50 to 60% of the vote. He needs 50% plus one, as he has said himself. And so the feeling right now is there's not some sort of leadership race waiting in the wings for Kenney to be voted out on Wednesday, and this big race starts. The impression I get from people inside the legislature, inside the UCP, as I say, even those who don't really like Kenney, is that he will still survive on Wednesday. Now that number is going to be important. If it's 51%, it means his party is split. If it's 60%, more comfortable for Kenney. But then the questions start to increase. If it's a big vote for Kenney, just how fair was that vote? So a lot of questions still will remain after that vote on May 18th. We're expecting the results sometime between 4 and 6 in the afternoon.
So, Catherine, as Graham's talking about, and I like that he used, Graham, I like that you used the word survive. We've been talking about what is the survivable number coming out of this, because while the Premier may insist it's a 50% plus one scenario, if you look back in the history of even Conservative premiers or leadership votes in Alberta alone, or if we broaden the conversation, there's really no politician that can go to his own membership or her own party or the population at large and say, I got 50% plus one, so everything's great and I'm going to stick around. Graham's using the phrase survivable, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking in my mind of the Monty Python skit, like I'm not dead yet, and like all the limbs are lopped off. Like what is a score in the low to mid 50s, high 50s, even low 60s mean for Jason Kenney's leadership? Then the campaign starts to convince people that that's some sort of a mandate to keep on governing.
Merely a flesh wound.
Yeah, merely a flesh wound.
It's interesting you bring that up, because Brian Jean posted a video of what he had hoped to make as a membership statement yesterday. He was told not to, and it was basically bringing up that history of Redford and Stelmach leaving after 77% and Klein leaving after low numbers. So, yeah, you're right. If he survives the leadership, it is not over. You still have this motley crew of incongruous Big Tent conservatives. So you have these libertarians sitting next to law and order tough on crime guys. You have people who believe in the individual woman's right to choose on abortion sitting next to the champions of the preborn. You have the no corporate welfare, we need to get spending under control, sitting next to the people who know we need to champion for the job creators. And you have Judas, Brian Jean, sitting at the cabinet table. So do you kick him out of caucus? If so, you make him a martyr and others may follow. And so there's going to be in the next little while, if Kenney survives, as Graham says, it's looking that way. What happens? Is your loyalty to Jason Kenney? Is your loyalty to the party? Is your loyalty to the constituents who elected you? So there's going to be this question. But what brings them together, all these different beliefs, is the vanquishing the evil foe of the dreaded Trudeau-Notley alliance. So there's going to be a question. That's what Kenney's going to have to do, is say, we need to stay united. Otherwise, the accidental NDP are going to be not so accidental and get back into government. And we need to stick together. Maybe you don't like me, but stick together for the good of Conservatives. But there's so many things that could happen. There could be a legal challenge of the result. He could get pressure from the caucus to say 50% isn't good enough. I don't care if that's the majority. Get out. We're not behind you. We don't think we can win with you. But so there's a lot of different paths.
Yeah, but how much? And I'm curious for both of your takes on this. I don't know, like, who else is there? The nerdy, geeky side of me, Catherine, wants to dig into your Judas Brian Jean comment, and I'm not sure it's Judas. I think because I think a lot of people would probably describe Brian Jean as the Jesus in this scenario, right? He's the one that was nailed up to the cross. He's the one that wound up coming back. I'm not proclaiming this so as to save myself the headache from all of the believers across Western Canada that want to take issue with the comparison. But there's a lot of people, like when you say, are you loyal to the Premier, to Jason Kenney, or are you loyal to the party? Graham, I'm not convinced that Jason Kenney is not the party. It's not like there's 3 or 4 heirs apparent that are ready to step up. It's not as though this party is strong and being hampered by him.
You're right, absolutely, because Kenney is the party. Kenney built this party. Go back, 2017. He convinced members of the Wild Rose and the old PCs to join this new party and elect him as leader. He's a wily politician, been around for more than 20 years. He learned a lot under Stephen Harper. This is a guy who recruited a lot of the current members of caucus. He recruited them, and they're neophytes. They're brand new. They couldn't organize a mutiny and a rowboat if they tried. And a lot of the people who are against Kenney right now, most vocal, are the old Wild Rosers, the old Wild Rose MLAs who have some experience, but again, they're not that well organized. And you're right, there's nobody in the wings. Now, Brian Jean is thinking of himself as the next person, next leader in the wings. A lot of people in the party I've talked to don't see Brian Jean as the next leader. They don't really see anybody. Kenney is not grooming anybody to replace him. He is the party. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people on caucus might not be in love with his leadership style. There's half a dozen spoke out against him, but the majority either are very loyal or are just keeping really quiet. They're not organizing against him. It would be helpful for the anti-Kenney crowd to have some sort of person who was seen as the great savior. We're going to be watching that analogy, but the person that could actually get the party back on its feet, become more popular. There's nobody there. And so that's helping Kenney. So Kenney's actually managed to turn this leadership review into Kenney versus Kenney, basically into Kenney versus Notley, the NDP. And that's a case of he's saying basically, as Catherine pointed out, he's telling people, even if you don't like me, hold your nose and vote for me. Otherwise, we're going to have the NDP win the next election. It's a very simplistic argument, but it can be very persuasive because the NDP is doing really well right now. It has been ahead in the polls. It's got $6 million it raised last year. In fundraising, the UCP got $4 million. So the NDP is doing really well. So the NDP really is a threat to the UCP.
Catherine, was it legit? We saw these fundraising totals, and I didn't do any digging. This is the luxury of having two great columnists and journalists like we do here. Catherine Griwkowsky, Graham Thomson joining us. Saw that the NDP had led fundraising in the last quarter, the UCP behind them, and then there's like a pro-life party that was third, well ahead of the Alberta Party, the Alberta Liberals, and a bunch of the other kind of maybe fledgling political entities. That I think people saw that and kind of went, "What's this?" It was kind of an unusual statistic to be released, especially in the context of what's happening in the United States and the conversations we're seeing in Canada and the Conservative leadership candidacy of Dr. Leslyn Lewis, who's talking a lot about her pro-life position. What did that say to you, that fundraising data that was released last week?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there have been some members of the UCP caucus who are anti-abortion or anti-medical assistance in dying and have been very vocal. But I think it's the success is there's maybe a social conservative contingent that is dissatisfied and says Kenney has not gone far enough, despite his reputation as being an anti-abortion crusader. He doesn't want to touch that. He knows he doesn't want to touch that. On the fundraising numbers, though, just for the donations to the party, the UCP is behind the NDP, but the UCP actually changed the financial disclosure law, the same changes that had a fixed election date and membership rules. They changed it so parties no longer have to disclose constituency association donations every quarter. So that's where a lot of the UCP's money is funded. So they were actually ahead of the UCP for the first quarter. So that's going to be a plus in the column for Jason Kenney, that the fundraising is starting to rebound.
Do you, Catherine, as a journalist, do you look at how seriously do you take fundraising numbers? Like, I guess when people want it, when people want to do something or contribute something, I'm talking voters or members of the general public, one of the things they can do is donate $20 or donate $100, right? You as a journalist, what do you read into fundraising trends?
Well, if I can continue on the religious metaphors here, I would say that money covers all manner of sins. And I think that's why going into this, I thought Jason Kenney was in a lot of trouble. Like he could be tanking in the polls because the polls doesn't matter. The only poll that matters is election day. But what was his sin, if you like, is he wasn't bringing in that money. And if you don't have that war chest, you're hoops. So I do pay a great deal of attention to the fundraising. Yeah, for sure. Money talks.
Yeah. Well, yeah, money. You're absolutely right there. Let me throw some numbers out. I should update our audience, especially those listening on the podcast. So these were published by Elections Alberta. The numbers were out just on the 4th of May. So call it, just over a week ago. The New Democrats collecting slightly more than $1 million in donations in the first quarter of 2022 is $888,000 for the UCP. But like Catherine just said, another $375,000 donated to constituency associations. But third on the list, and here's where it gets interesting, is that the Pro-Life Alberta Political Association raised, now it's a distant third, $68,000, but still, that's almost triple what the Alberta Party raised, $30,000. The Liberal Party of Alberta, $20,000, and then the Wild Rose Independence Party about $14,000. And I would suggest humbly that those that may donate to a party like the Wild Rose Independence Party probably want to wait and see what happens with people like Brian Jean, Drew Barnes, Angela Pitt, Todd Lowen. There's a whole bunch of names that we could get into before we're up against the clock, and we're almost there. And I know that Graham and Catherine both have other things to do. Graham, I want to reference a piece of yours at ipolitics.ca, an opinion piece that was out just a couple of days ago. Kenney takes a victory lap while the race is still underway. And I wanted to talk about a story. If we talk about what's flying under the radar, not that nobody knows about it, but most people aren't focusing on a decision, the Alberta Court of Appeal determining that the federal government overstepped its mark with the Impact Assessment Act. Everybody knows that as C-69, or the so-called No More Pipelines Act. The decision made with a majority opinion from 3 of 5 justices and additional judge signing off on that opinion. The word from Premier Kenney, from Energy Minister Sonia Savage, is that this is one of the biggest victories in Alberta's history. But Graham, what does it mean?
It's an opinion. It's not a ruling. It's not a decision, really. It's an opinion. So the government wants to know, what do you think of this Bill C-69, that's the Impact Assessment Act in the federal government? And the court said, yeah, we think it's unconstitutional. And the wording was quite extraordinary, I thought, in the this is the opinion of the majority of the Court of Queen's Bench, the Court of Appeal. It's saying Parliament's taking a wrecking ball to the constitutional right of Albertans. Government was trying to put a chokehold on the provinces. This is a decision. It sounds like it was written by Kenney himself, but it's an opinion. It has no legal weight. Doesn't change anything, no matter what Jason Nixon is saying, that the law is no longer valid in Alberta. Another thing, the decision was focused on not inter-provincial stuff, like not pipelines crossing the borders, but intra-provincial projects, things that are built within Alberta. And the court is saying that the federal government can't give its opinion or assessment or overrule things built within Alberta. This does nothing to help Kenney get pipelines built across provincial boundaries or into the U.S. There's two issues here. One is natural resources, and that is something the provinces have control over, and it's something that the court focused on. The second issue is the environment, and that's a shared responsibility. And that's something the federal government does have a say in. And there's an echo here of the decision by the same Court of Appeal in 2020 saying that the federal carbon price was unconstitutional. Well, the Supreme Court said no, that law, that tax is constitutional. And experts are saying right now we'll have the same outcome with this decision, with the Supreme Court. The federal government wants to take this to the Supreme Court. And it seems, according to the experts, that Alberta will lose this once again. But Kenney's taking a victory lap right now because that helps his case, not only in the leadership race, mind you, that the votes are already being counted on that, but also in the next election. If Kenney survives on Wednesday, he'll be using this court opinion to say that only he can fight for Alberta. But once again, he could very well lose this as he lost the fight against the federal carbon tax.
Catherine, what does this all mean? We recognize from a political strategy standpoint, and by the way, the strategists coming up in about 5 minutes here, our Real Talk Roundtable. We got Corey, Zain, and Stephen set to go. They're in the bullpen warming up. Catherine, from a strategy standpoint, we know that politicians, in particular conservative politicians and liberal or NDP politicians, would have their own areas, their own niche, their own initiatives that they might pursue. For Jagmeet Singh, perhaps it's dental care or something like that. But for conservatives, we know that whether or not you're actually getting those pipelines built, so long as the optics are there, that you're fighting for that industry, that you're fighting for the pipelines, that you're fighting back against the tanker ban and the no new pipelines and all of this legislation, that can translate politically. But ultimately, at the end of the day, aren't voters going to say, well, what have you actually got done? I mean, with all the saber rattling, what have you actually accomplished? What does this story mean longer term, do you think?
Yeah, I do think you're right that it's not about the win so much as the fight. Like I said at the top, it is what unites those conservatives is the fight against Trudeau and Notley. And it's the fight for, that's what they were elected on, is jobs, economy, and pipelines. And if you're fighting for pipelines, you're doing what's right. I will go back to Brian Jean again. His first question upon his return to the legislature was on May 5th, the anniversary that the NDP came to power in 2015. And he asked, hey, what the heck is happening with this equalization referendum? We had it, but I haven't heard anything. Have you actually written to Justin Trudeau? Have you, where are these constitutional talks that were supposed to open? So there is a contingent that's wondering what the heck is happening. And the response, Kenney wasn't in the House, it was Justice Minister Tyler Shandro. And he told Brian Jean, who was one of the co-founders of the UCP, that only Kenney can unify the party, which is it didn't answer the question, right? It was an interesting play there. So but I guess going back to your question, what does it all mean? It is about the fight. It is about unifying. And I think for any lawyers outside of Alberta, it might seem so bizarre to see these political opinions, not legal opinions, in this decision, but that's the Alberta Court of Appeal. It's always an outlier. It is sort of a, I don't know if activist court is the right word, but it's weird. It's a weird thing in Alberta.
Graham, anything to add to that in closing? I like that. I mean, that assessment from Catherine is pretty interesting because to be honest, that's not the thing that's going to be on the average person's radar. Would you agree?
Yeah, she's right. It's a fight. It's always a fight against Trudeau. It doesn't matter if he's going to lose the carbon tax, he's fighting against the federal carbon tax. Doesn't matter if he can, he's going to fight the federal government on environmental impact assessments. It's just the fight. And people are happy to see him fight. It's a bit like Klein. Klein would promised to fight against things like same-sex marriage, but he didn't. Fight against the GST, which he didn't. People just like premiers to rattle the sabers at the federal government. So that can actually win him points. And again, right now, it's not about facts for Kenney. It's all about winning political points as he's hoping to survive his leadership and then move into the red zone. Because don't forget, the next provincial election is only a year away at the end of May in 2023.
That is Graham Thomson. You can read his work in Alberta Views magazine. You can, of course, catch him on CBC, writing at cbc.ca and iPolitics, which is where we found his most recent piece. Kenney takes a victory lap while the race is still underway at iPolitics.ca. Catherine Griwkowsky, you've seen her on Power and Politics, and, of course, she does a ton of stuff making politics understandable and accessible by way of... And you can check out Alberta Today at politicstoday.news. That's where you can subscribe, including, and Catherine, we didn't get into it today, your piece just a couple of days ago on government ads that will promote the Premier's radio show. Thanks for making time for us this morning, you two, and have a great weekend.
Thanks.
You got it. That's Catherine Griwkowsky, Graham Thomson. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, less than 2 minutes from now, the Strategists. We want to let you know that these interviews happen because we have the support of amazing sponsors like Grand Dog Essentials, quality raw food. Have you ever been through the experience where your dog has a seizure? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, your beloved furry family member goes down? We had it happen with our black lab, Monroe, when she was just under a year old. It's terrifying when it happens. You don't really know how to react. Some folks are in a scenario where their dogs are having seizures all the time. For some families, it works to switch their food from veterinarian recommended kibble to raw. It can actually reduce the frequency of those seizures. Now, why? You want to learn more about it before you make the decision yourself, or recommend you check out the blog posts at granddog.ca. Subscribe to them on Instagram as well. The Grand Dog team does an amazing job of helping you understand the value of feeding your dogs quality raw food, like we do in our house. The promo code REALTALK gets you 10% off your first-time order, delivered right to your door. If you're in Calgary, Edmonton, or Central Alberta, granddog.ca is where you can sign up. Our friends at Park Power, you know them, the friendly local utilities provider that make it worth your while in more ways than one to bring your internet, electricity, and natural gas business their way. The utilities bundle is one of the reasons. That's one way to drop your fees, and the other is to use the promo code 2022-REALTALK when you sign up at parkpower.ca. That knocks $70 off your first bill. And of course, if you're looking at integrating solar into your setup, Park Power gives you a better deal with their solar rebate buyback program than anybody else in the province, guaranteed. Our friends at Freson Brothers know this weekend a lot of you are going to be out heating up the grill. 'Tis the season. The warm weather's back, and you can celebrate by enjoying Freson Brothers real butchers, Alberta beef, pork, chicken, turkey, and of course, a lot of plant-based options as well. Freson Brothers has everything your family needs to heat up the grill in 16 different Alberta communities. Freson Brothers for more than 65 years. Alberta grown, Alberta owned. Our next three guests, co-host, one of Canada's most popular political podcasts. And it's always a treat for us on a biannual basis to welcome the Strategists to the Real Talk Roundtable. Corey Hogan is an AVP at the University of Calgary. He happens to be a member of Real Talk's editorial board. Stephen Carter is the president of Decide Campaigns. And Zain Velji, who typically writes the Strategists and works to keep these two in line as host, now joins us, of course, a partner at Northweather, and in this context, a panelist for us. Zain, you get to wear a different hat when you join us on Real Talk. How do you prepare differently? You're up probably 5 o'clock this morning hitting the heavy bag?
I prepare the exact same way, which is by asking Corey and Stephen what time are we supposed to be on, and then joining 5 minutes later. Okay. You're in for a great show, Ryan. You're going to get high quality, takes from me. Trust me.
Well, I'm grateful that you're here 5 minutes late or not, and we're looking forward to the next 20, 25, 30 minutes or so and seeing how that goes. The three of you, I know that your podcast has taken breaks over the years, and then you've come back as your other professional endeavors have allowed, and a big part of that's had people excited is your Strategists live events. You had a big successful one, a packed house down in Calgary a few weeks ago, and you've got one coming up in Edmonton on May 19th. Carter, this will be the day after we expect we'll see the results of Jason Kenney's leadership review. You'll have a lot to talk about, my man.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be huge. The Maharaja Hall. I mean, we got a great deal there. Zain hooked us up, which was pretty exciting. We haven't sold out completely. We're always trying to sell more tickets and bring people into the strategist world. You don't have to buy our merchandise at the show. I will tell you, we were talking about bringing in advertisers on our show, Ryan.
Yeah.
But having just listened to you do yours, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Is it, you just figure we've already secured all the big accounts in the province, or is it something else, Carter?
No, I mean, selling out like that, it's something we would never do.
Hey,
right?
you know what, man? I didn't have this.
The
The city of Calgary didn't just strike me a check for $104,000, and so I got to bring on advertisers.
I've never seen a hype man be so overt and so bad at their job at the same time like Stephen Carter is. Thank you, Carter, for really distracting from the point.
An enamel mug, which I apparently didn't know what enamel is. So now we've got that figured out.
So, Carter, I will let our audience know that, and I think that the Venn diagram would suggest that there is some crossover with our audiences, and you have suggested to me, and I'll let the audience know, that you basically intend to treat this like a 30-minute commercial for the Strategists. So you'll be vlogging your live events, selling your mugs. You'll probably mention that the three of you just signed up to Patreon a short while ago. How's that going?
It's going exceptionally well, as you can imagine, Ryan. I mean, we're giving unbelievable benefits like being able to listen to our free podcast, but now you get to give us money. So
Corey,
it's pretty amazing.
Corey, do you get kind of like a bit of a sick taste in your mouth when you see this going on? I mean, you're affiliated with this.
I'm kind of used to it. It's just background taste at this point. I'm just happy to be here to support the Grand Dog team, Park Power, and the Friesen brothers. I love those plant-based options. Only reason I got out of bed this morning. Really nice to see you.
Thank you. And it's probably actually a welcome change from being threatened to be sued by Flair Airlines. You come on this show, you know that you're more covered. You don't have to watch out what,
Yeah, well, I mean, on this show, we assume it won't be a threat. We'll actually finally get that letter.
But seriously, in the chat, who lasts longer, the Strategist podcast or Flair Airlines? It's a genuine question, and I'd love to know. Who will be around longer, you or Flair? Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. The federal airline landscape really can be volatile, gentlemen. I mean, we can get into this if you like. What do you expect the three of you are going to be talking about at Maharaja Hall on the 19th of May, Corey? What do you expect? We were just talking to two journalists that cover the Alberta Legislature on a daily basis. Of course, being the journalists, reputable as they are, they didn't give us numbers. They didn't try to peg down what they think the Premier will score on this leadership review. But I want to go across the board here. Corey, what are you anticipating, all things considered, including allegations that there may be some shadiness on the membership purchases?
Yeah, all things considered, I think Jason Kenney is going to win. The question will be by how much. That's largely based on three factors. One is he's acting like he's going to win. He sure seems to think he's going to win. The second is, as you sort of alluded to, he controls the process, and shadiness is in the eye of the beholder. But as the guy who controls the board of the UCP, he was able to do things like a last-minute change from an in-person event in Red Deer to a mail-in ballot, which maybe allowed him both to buy some time and get less intense members also to be voting there. And then the third reason is Brian Jean, Danielle Smith, the opponents of Jason Kenney have underperformed every step of the way. They've never managed to fill a room. They've never actually managed to pull the MLAs and the numbers they threatened from the caucus. So why would we think they'd suddenly find competence in this 11th hour?
I'm a little bit offended, not by anything that the three of you have said, but typically I'll appreciate contributions to our live chat, especially from longtime viewers, loyal viewers, intuitive, intelligent commenters like Jillian. But Jillian says, looking at my Real Talk mug, which is also this is what we call the Real Talk Crescent mug, and it's they're beautifully handmade here in Western Canada, delivered right to your door when you order them conveniently from the merch link at ryanjesperson.com. But Jillian contributes this to the live chat. She says, looking at my Real Talk mug, feeling like I need, and here's the offensive word, feeling like I need an upgrade to a Strategist one.
Yeah.
Which,
3 choices too. We've got multiple mug choices for all of your hot beverage needs here. Now, listen, if you're in the market for a mug, we know you like mugs. So on the other side of this particular mug, we have another picture of a mug. And I appreciate this is a podcast and not a, visual medium, but hit thestrategist.ca up and, buy yourself a nice throw pillow, buy yourself a mug.
The throw pillow thing is real. I saw Carter opening one on, you posted on Twitter. You actually got one. You received one in the mail. I thought that was a prop. I thought that was a gag, a joke.
I can be 2 things.
Welcome to the show, Ryan. Welcome to the podcast.
Zain, no, go ahead. I don't mean to step on your toes, but Zain, we've been talking about the language we've been using in describing this leadership review as a survivable number. I'll give credit to Vitor Marciano, who was using that phrase on these airwaves on this show. He said it's not necessarily a pass or fail. What is the survivable number? The Premier says it's 50% plus 1, but optically that's a tough one to spin.
It's definitely a tough one to spin. So, extending on what Corey's talking about here, what I'm looking for is, frankly, May 18th is just the beginning. And the question is, what is it a beginning of? Because it's going to be a lot of stuff that could happen on the 19th, 20th thereafter, and then downstream from there, right? We're looking at all the way to the possibility of an early election. But even prior to that, we're looking at what the challenges look like in court, what the statements are of the rebels. Do they actually win? Corey's, I suspect, pretty confident, at least now, with Jason Kenney going to win based on how Jason Kenney is conducting himself, including going down to the United States literally the day before the leadership review results. But there's so many chapters to be written beyond this. And, there's so much uncertainty. But what we can certainly expect is that all wounds will not be healed on the 18th. In fact, there will be even deeper crevices, deeper fractures that we are expecting to have even louder, more acrimonious conversation about. And so the UCP infighting, I think, just enters another chapter, perhaps even a louder, more assertive, more aggressive chapter on the 18th onwards than it resolves anything. I think we're a far ways away from resolving this fracture within the party.
Carter, president of Decide Campaigns. You've obviously worked on a lot of successful campaigns, most recently Mayor Jody Gondek down in Calgary. If you're right now advising, let's say, Rachel Notley and the NDP for their strategy through this, which appears to have largely been to kind of sit back and let it happen, to not try to capitalize, it seems, on some of the headlines. Or even if you're talking to like Barry Morishita with the Alberta Party, fledgling fundraising, but the party's not dead yet, right? Like Barry's still traveling all over the province trying to get 87 candidates for the next election next year. What does the strategy look like for the parties that aren't the United Conservative Party right now?
Well, never get in the way of, your opposition imploding. So allow them to destroy themselves. But at the same time, you need to really connect with the voters at this point. The voters are, of course, watching the UCP circus, and that is the entertainment. That's the primary show in the gladiatorial arena right now. But at some point, you're going to want to present yourself as a government in waiting. And I think that this is where the NDP have always struggled, because the NDP have been focusing on winning the day. We got to win the day. We got to win today's Twitter battle. We got to win today's question period. No, you don't. You need to make sure that you're in a position to be the government in waiting, and that you have people who are willing to vote for you, not just for people willing to vote against Jason Kenney. That is a fundamental shift that they have never been able to really capitalize on. I know they won in 2015, but that was when everybody was voting against Jim Prentice. So this is a different animal, and they need to start thinking of it differently.
Carter, for the benefit of those watching on YouTube that'll be wondering what the hell is going on behind you, are you like, have you recently? Well, I didn't even mean it. I was going to say, have you recently been fired from somewhere? But you don't still have you don't still have. You're not in your old office, are you? What's up with the bare shelves?
We are. I came into a little bit of money recently, and we're going to be moving. So we're moving on Saturday. So it's all packed up.
All right. Congratulations.
I'm pretty excited about it.
This is a good one from Dwayne. Dwayne says, and I'll put this out to the three of you. Maybe, Corey, we'll throw it in front of you first. Dwayne says political mergers in Alberta have a history of not succeeding. What do your guests think will happen if the UCP disintegrates? I don't know if it disintegrates, but Corey, how can you see the party being chipped away at?
Yeah, I just don't know if I agree that political mergers don't have a history of succeeding. I can think of a lot of political mergers that have led us to this current point. We had the Wild Rose and the Alberta Alliance become the Wild Rose Alliance. We had the Wild Rose Alliance and the PCs become the UCP. These are both examples of groups becoming more successful through merger. I think the view that it's not been successful is more tied to the ideas of like the Liberals and the NDP never managing to pull off a merger. But honestly, those merger conversations became a distraction at some point, and the NDP had their pants on. They were ready for the bus, and that's how they became government. So I would sort of say, test that assumption and see if maybe it's just rooted in where your politics are, because in Alberta, mergers have actually proven to be successful at different times along the way there. But it might fall apart. It might not fall apart. There's obviously a tension within the conservative movement, not just in Alberta, but nationally, that you see with the People's Party of Canada. You see, and the former PCs, I guess, and the former Reformers all duking it out in their corners. And maybe the movement is just too big, but it's holding right now. And right now they're all fighting for the big prize. So we talked about this, 6 months ago. Where the UCP will really get into trouble is when people start deciding the leadership is not up for grabs, because right now they'd rather win the thing that can govern than be, the people who are in this rump party. They remember what the rump party was like still. They remember it provincially. They remember it federally.
This is, it feels like a good time to tee this up. John, why don't we roll it? This is from just a couple of nights ago in our home city of Edmonton. Of course, the Conservative leadership debate, the official English language debate with the French language debate to come. And here was probably, in my mind, the most noteworthy exchange between Pierre Poilievre and Jean Charest.
But Mr. Charest, why didn't you take a moment to acknowledge that you're the only one on this stage who actually voted for a law that would recriminalize abortion when you were part of the Mulroney government? You did. And you can take a moment now to renounce your earlier vote if you've changed your mind, but that was your position. You seem to have forgotten it. You've forgotten a lot of things about your record. You forgot that you brought in a carbon tax. You forgot that you raised the fuel tax, the sales tax, the health tax. You forgot that you banned natural gas development in your own province. You forgot you brought in a long gun registry. You seem a little bit forgetful about your record, Mr. Charest, but Canadians now remember.
No. You guys know the rules. You know the consequences. Mr. Charest, 30 seconds.
I am very proud of my record as a conservative that stands on its own merits, on fiscal conservatism, on reducing the size of government, reducing taxes, which I did when I was premier, by the way. Quebecers had $1 billion less taxes paid and higher disposable income after I finished in government, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, Mr. Poilievre, thank you for at least now telling us that you are pro-choice. We understand that's what you're saying tonight. Please confirm that
just a couple of nights ago in Edmonton. Zain, it's got to be nice to see Tom Clark doing some of the heavy lifting, trying to keep people in line, giving you a break every once in a while.
Yeah.
But the significance, Zain, of that exchange, Pierre Poilievre, I think it's clear, landing a few pretty significant blows. The crowd in Edmonton, obviously, on his side. But the question is that best for this party? Is that what this party needs to win an election? A guy that can throw bombs like that?
Let me address the Tom Clark debate format question first. It wasn't a question, but I'll comment on it anyway. To anyone who's ever moderating a debate, don't look to political podcasts as inspiration. What the fuck was a lightning round at the end with the paddles and your favorite ice cream and book that you're reading? That's not what we need here.
Jordan Peterson paid for that, Zain. He paid for the opportunity to have his book mentioned.
So on the content, I think there's a lot of things happening in the Conservative Party right now, and I think we're seeing some spillover on the provincial side as well. They're having a purity test. They're having a politics of, are we establishment or anti-establishment? And they're simultaneously having this sort of grievance moment, saying that it is okay to get angry, to get mad, to be loud about it, to be vocal about it. In your previous segment, when you're talking about ledge politics, there was the concept of Kenney wanting the fight. Well, I'd say that on the federal side now, the conservative movement is not just about wanting to fight and not just with each other, but it's about encouraging supporters to say, we need to fight, we need to be loud, we need to fight with each other, that the convoy was exactly what this country needed, not denouncing what happened to Jagmeet Singh in Peterborough, which was distasteful, unbelievable, horrendous. And so the Conservative Party may think they're having a moment here of cleansing, of purity, of grievance, of getting loud and gluing together. What they're actually having, Ryan, is this moment that I think is such a stain on our collective history that fundamentally thinks it is the second option or the natural second governing party or next choice when people get tired with the Liberals. The consequences, I don't think we fully understood, and we're seeing some of that spillover happen here provincially. But the multitude of things with grievance, purity tests, and this anti-elite sort of rhetoric, I think is a real recipe for danger in the coming weeks and months ahead.
Zain, we talked about this yesterday, and I'm glad you brought it up. This experience, what do you want to call it? I mean, it's assault, it's harassment of what Jagmeet Singh experienced in Peterborough, Ontario, and it has a lot of people, I think, with first of all, their hearts in their throats, wondering how something like this could happen in the first place, how easily something like this could go sideways, and what it says about the current state of politics and what continues to be described as a divided nation. And this was obviously a profane outburst, people sticking their middle fingers right in the face of Jagmeet Singh, who's sort of ushered by what appears to be a lone body man, or maybe it's even just a campaign volunteer that gets him into that SUV and safely out of the way. But, Stephen, we couldn't ignore the people standing at that windshield yelling, first of all, among the get out of Canada, get out of here, get out of Peterborough, you're not welcome here, F you. But people also saying, essentially calling him a traitor, and then loudly proclaiming, this is the Freedom Convoy. And I've seen a lot of commentators say, these are Pierre Poilievre's people, right? And he and Leslyn Lewis, Poilievre and Lewis, seem to be competing over who is the bigger supporter of
tripping
this
over
convoy.
themselves.
Tripping
Absolutely.
over themselves.
Yeah, it drives you crazy because obviously there's always been wingnuts, there's always been racists. That has been a part of Canadian history that we're trying actually to eliminate, right? We're talking about systemic racism, we're talking about these issues, and we're trying to push them out of the way and to redeem ourselves in some fashion. Except it's become fashionable again to wear our racism on our sleeves in certain subsets. And what really solidifies that is when you see politicians like Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and Pierre Poilievre and Leslyn Lewis all deciding that they are going to court the racist vote. When you decide to legitimize those voters by reaching out for them. I mean, it's one thing when you kind of accidentally get them, but when you are actually out there trying to actively court these racist voters by using dog whistles. I mean, we used to use the dog whistle. Now we're using just blatant whistles. Where Pierre Poilievre and Leslyn Lewis and I can't remember the last guy's name are all standing up there and all saying how great the convoy was.
Yeah, Roman
when we all know
Baber.
that it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't great. And if you continue to try and push for these these voters, they will continue to feel legitimized and they will continue to take these actions. And it's wrong. And we should be punishing the politicians that are actually courting these types of voters. And this solidifies one of the problems of the two-party problem, right? There are two parties in the UCP. There are two parties within the Canadian Conservative Party, the Conservative Party of Canada. Those two conservatives they don't work together. Whether it's Jean Charest and his group of people, or it's Pierre Poilievre, or it's Jason Kenney. Jason Kenney is the moderate of this group, apparently. These two conservative poles, if you will, one is disgusting, and the other one's trying to bring fiscal conservatism to bear. And I'll tell you something, the group that's trying to bring fiscal conservatism to bear, if you have to embrace the disgusting part, then you too are disgusting.
Yeah, I saw a comment from Randy earlier in our live chat. I'll apologize to him. I don't have it in front of me to quote verbatim, but he basically said one of the really troubling things about this story to him is that, half of the Conservatives are upset, not that just that the state of the party is so terrible, but that it's not terrible enough. And I thought that was an interesting insight. Just this morning in the National Post, published about 15 hours ago as we record this live, 9:30 Mountain, 11:30 Eastern, nationalpost.com, Kelly McParland writing that Pierre Poilievre, and keep in mind this is supposed to be Canada's conservative newspaper, Pierre Poilievre, an opinion piece, is too big a risk to lead the Conservatives. And what McParland focuses on is Poilievre's promise to fire the governor of the Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, saying that, says Kelly, it was a rash, reckless, and dangerous pledge, says to politicize the job of governor of the Bank of Canada would be disastrous. And Stephen, you invoke the Donald Trump legacy. Corey, it reminds me of some of Trump's promises. I'm going to fire this person. I'm going to get rid of that person. And the average voter, the average member of the public, has no real understanding of the role that the governor of the Bank of Canada does or does not play in inflation or government programs or CERB. They just love that somebody's up there saying they're going to clean house.
Yeah, get rid of the elites, right? The reason you've got all of these problems is these elites, these gatekeepers that are just putting their thumb on you. And look, I think that one of the challenges that I always have here is that there are things that need to be better. We do need to make sure that people aren't left behind. But to both Zain's point and Stephen's point, this validation of your grievance is real, and these easy solutions that tend to float into racism and tyranny and calling people traitors is not better, is not a solution. It's just it's a poison on the system. When you talk about getting rid of the Bank of Canada governor, I do want to contextualize this. This happens about every 30 years. Somebody decides they don't care about bank independence. Jean Chrétien made great hay out of wanting to have a different Bank of Canada governor in the lead up to the 93 election. 30 years before that, it was an issue in Canadian politics, and they actually had a vote of parliament to get rid of the Bank of Canada governor. But it doesn't tend to be a very good idea. And certainly when your concerns are substantively about them not doing as good enough of a job as they could, when they've, by the numbers, Canada has, weathered this a lot better than most countries, that becomes even more problematic still. But you said this, or you were quoting McParland, but it wasn't a rash decision by Poilievre. It's not as though he was on stage and just came up with it. This was calculated. This was something he wants to do.
It was doubled down upon as well.
For sure. And like the real risk here is, well, now everything the Bank of Canada does between now and the next election, people are going to say, is that political? Is that designed to prop up Trudeau because he just wants to keep his job? Is that we've gotten into a dangerous place potentially, because say what you will about Chrétien's rhetoric, tended to be during an election campaign. It ended pretty quickly. The bank didn't have to make a lot of decisions in the interim here. This is a different beast. This is years until the next election.
Zain?
Absolutely. It's poisoning the well, right? While his crypto talk takes a big smack in the markets, he's trying to deviate and say this is who is to blame. And listen, on a fundamental populist message, I can see how it works, right? His video today was very simply, if there was someone who didn't do a good job and they were underperforming, wouldn't you want them to go? Wouldn't you want a clean house? Well, Justin Trudeau refused to do that, and I will. And what he's trying to do and try to say ultimately is I've got easy solutions to incredibly complex problems. He's done this multiple times now. If there's a through line to the Pierre Poilievre campaign, freedom might be what he wants you to think it is, but what it actually is that the world has complex problems, global problems in certain cases like inflation, but don't fucking worry. I'm the guy that's got these solutions. They're easy 3-step, 5-step solutions. I'm going to explain to you in a 5-minute Twitter video. I'm the guy to get us out of this. Freedom will be the through line once I have these simple solutions. And I think if you are Charest or Brown or one of the competitors, you need to go after this guy's sanity and seriousness versus trying to go with this left-right argument, the more centrist, moderate version of conservatism versus this puritanical, new right-wing version of conservatism, because you will lose on that. But where you have an opportunity to win on is how serious this guy is, or lack of how serious he is on certain things. I mean, I think it's a long shot to begin with, but man, oh man, I think that is where his Achilles heel has to be in this leadership race, and it certainly will be when he gets out of it.
I think you're wrong. I think that it's not necessarily his Achilles heel. The danger here is that it could work. We saw it work in 2016 with Donald Trump. The language, the tone, I think Pierre Poilievre is smarter than Donald Trump. But he's smart enough to have learned some lessons about what worked.
What evidence do we have of that? I see no evidence that he's smarter than Donald Trump.
No, but I want Corey to finish his point. Sorry, Ryan, you're part of the show too.
No, I'm just.
Corey,
I've got the best seat in the house here, boys.
We're back at it.
When he gets legitimate criticism about something that he says, he really leans into this best defense is a good offense. Somebody complains about something you're saying and you pull down their pants and you punch them in the face, seems to be what he says. So he gets like this attack against him for the impropriety of attacking a Bank of Canada governor. And his response is effectively, fuck you. I'm taking on the elites. I will bring them all down. I'm just getting started. In a different era, the politician would say, okay, maybe I went a little too far, or you've got to understand, or you would contextualize it. He's not interested in the context or the nuance. He has decided to make his brand that of the fighter, and that he's going to fight, whether you like it or not, against the so-called gatekeepers that he's defined. And so when I say he's smarter than Donald Trump, it's because he can turn that on and he can turn that off as he sees fit. If you look at him in committee and the way he grills officials, you can't tell me Donald Trump could do that. You couldn't convince me if you had all the time in the world that Donald Trump could do that. What's dangerous about Pierre Poilievre is that he knows exactly what he's doing. With Donald Trump, it was like an animal. It was instinct. He was cornered and he lashed out. Pierre Poilievre is making calculated decisions based on what he's seen work out there in other jurisdictions.
So Carter, I feel almost in a way guilty that we propose or we present these conversations and then we spend all this time talking about Pierre Poilievre and Jean Charest and a little mention of Dr. Leslyn Lewis in the context of the pro-life movement. And that's about it. But you've got Brampton's mayor, the former, albeit short-lived leader of Ontario's PC party, Patrick Brown, a very capable politician. You got Scott Aitchison, a sitting member of parliament, who I think impressed some people earlier this week at the leadership debate. You got Roman Baber, who, God bless him for participating. But at the same time, if you're advising some of these other candidates, is this winnable? Are the results, for all intents and purposes, already determined? How do you advise strategy for other people in this race?
You're looking for roll-up votes. So you're looking to not be in last place, right? So if theoretically you could be in fifth place and then six would all come to you, and then you jump up to fourth, and then fifth would all come to you, and they jump up to third. And we can see these types of roll-up votes. So all is not lost if you're, for example, Scott Aitchison. Theoretically, you could pick up everybody's votes. But the problem is the way these votes are kind of aligned, it really isn't, they're not all available to you. So you really need to be in the top three in order to make this work. And then whoever's in third place, when they fall off that final ballot and they start to move towards one of the victors, first or second, if it's Leslyn Lewis, it's in third place, and all of those votes then go to Pierre Poilievre, then he's going to win. So how do you make yourself either the kingmaker? If I'm Scott Aitchison, I'm probably thinking I want to be the kingmaker for Jean Charest. Or if I'm Patrick Brown, I'm thinking I want to be the kingmaker for Jean Charest. And an outside chance, I can maybe be the person in second, right? If I can be the person in second, then maybe I can get there. I don't see Leslyn Lewis jumping in front of Pierre Poilievre, but stranger things have happened in these roll-ups, and it's the roll-up that matters. So I would be pushing, Aitchison and Brown and Charest to really be making their roll-up as strong as humanly possible. But realistically, Aitchison's going to roll up to Brown. Brown's going to roll up to Charest, and then we're all just going to have to hope that that's enough to beat Pierre Poilievre, and sanity will prevail.
We're right up to the time we've asked you to set aside, but I want to give Zain and Corey a chance to wrap as well. Some final thoughts, fellas.
I wouldn't sleep on Patrick Brown. I feel like his debate performance, and less so his performance, I should say, and more so the disproportionate attention that Poilievre was paying towards him, I think lets us maybe have a bit of a sense that the membership sales for the Brown camp, which their strategy has been very clear, racialized communities, ethnic, cultural communities, and Southern Ontario, that plus, to Carter's point, a roll-up of the Charest votes on third to second, because Brown very well could be in second here. That does not surprise me at all. Could create quite a formidable stack against Pierre Poilievre's, outright sort of viral-style dominance that we've been seeing across the board. Don't sleep on Patrick Brown.
Corey, last word to you.
Well, if this is going to be determined by the Conservative Party membership, then it's going to be Pierre Poilievre. And the only chance that the other candidates have is by expanding to different audiences that right now, at least, have largely written off the Conservative movement. And so you see Jean Charest trying to do that. You see Patrick Brown trying to do that. I will remind people that it is a point system and it is weighted by region. So one of the reasons Aaron O'Toole became leader of the Conservative Party is he ran the tables in Quebec. And it's quite possible Charest is going to do the same if Brown can have a strong showing in the 905. Pierre Poilievre might have 3 times as many members as those two combined, but if they're all in Southern Alberta, no good, no win, no dice. So the game's not called yet, but I sure think it would be foolish to say anything other than it's Pierre Poilievre's to lose.
Corey, if I know anything about Southern Albertans, they'll have absolutely no problem with their votes being discounted when it comes to a national election result.
Yeah.
It won't bother them one bit.
Very moderated on that one. Yeah.
You can see these 3 in action at the famed, storied Maharaja Banquet Hall Thursday, May 19th. You can get your tickets to see the Strategists live in Edmonton at thestrategists.ca. To the 3 of you, thanks for doing this. Carter, real quick, just before we go, if you were to be swinging by one of the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton or Sherwood Park, do you think you'd go today with the cotton candy blizzard treat, the Nestle drumstick with peanuts blizzard treat, or maybe the Girl Guides chocolatey mint cookie blizzard treat?
Well, funny question there, Ryan. That's all wrong answers. Of course, you go with the banana split, but you go to the Dairy Queen and you make sure you mention Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson, because Real Talk with Ryan Jesperson is the reason that you're going to Dairy Queen today. And thanks again to our sponsors. Thank you, everybody from the Strategists. Buy your merchandise as soon as you can. Thanks. We'll see you on the 19th of May. Good night.
Hey, no, don't sign off yet. Don't sign off yet. No.
Fuck, I'm out of here.
Because I just want to remind you who the kingmaker is in this relationship. DK on the live chat says Real Talk turned me on to the Strategist podcast. It's easily one of my favorite to listen to. The guys are great, and I might, says DK, even sign up for Patreon if they can lock in that Flair Airlines endorsement. So to the 3 of you got your work cut out.
Right
on.
Let's
work some good. Thanks, Thanks, Ryan.
All right, beauties.
You're the best, man.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to call those 3 friends, and honestly, it's one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. You can download The Strategist anywhere you get your podcasts, and of course, you can check out their Patreon on their website as well. After you sign up for our Patreon. Because if you keep our Patreon looking healthy, then we can continue to present roundtables like that with other podcasters.
And
Those guys are great.
And I'm the guy who's like, I'm not into politics. That was, you throw some Supriya Dwivedi in there too.
Oh yeah,
on a Friday, that would have been
a great
show. Would have been through the roof.
Hey, maybe we'll have to do
taken
that
away
some
from
other
anything.
time. Yeah, Graham and Catherine are like, what the fuck, man?
But no, awesome. And oh man, just I was right on board with Zain talking about. I said it yesterday about Pierre being reductive, and he just nailed it on the head.
Yeah.
Where like he's trying to draw a line through all these really complicated issues and be like, check, that's done.
Yeah, well, we grind their gears and we have fun with those 3, but those 3 are responsible for some of the most successful political campaigns in Alberta and other jurisdictions in the last 15, 20 years. So, including Calgary's Mayor Naheed Nenshi, and Zain's done some work on Rachel Notley's successful campaign, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are stoked to be partnered with the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, and Carter's take on the banana split. When's the last time you had a Dairy Queen banana split?
He's divisive.
Well, but he also reminds us of some things that might be flying under the radar that deserve or demand our attention. Yeah. Like, when's the last time we talked about the dairy-free dilly bar?
Right? That's my go-to.
Have you had, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. 3 of them.
I remember the first time I tried one, I was kind of like, yeah, we'll see. Because I'm big on the dilly bar. The dairy-free dilly bar. Phenomenal.
Your second one, you're like, yes. Third? Oh.
3, back to back to back.
Smash them.
Attaboy. That's like in the morning you wake up and there's 3 of the wooden dilly bar handles on the table and you go, oh,
it was a good night.
Better go walk the dog. These are the Dairy Queens at Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. And Carter's absolutely right. When you walk in or you go through that drive-thru, you don't let them know that you're there because of Real Talk. Same deal when you get in touch with Eden Landscaping at landscapeedmonton.ca. You can check him out online right now. You can make contact with Mike and his team. I keep banging this drum because I don't want you to, a month from now or 6 weeks from now, be like, I should have, why didn't I get in touch with them? Because it's going to be the middle of June or it's going to get into the beginning of July and you want to have people over, but, man, your lawn looks the same as it did last year. It's just looking lousy, or you still have that drainage problem. So you get that big summer rainstorm and then all of a sudden your backyard's underwater for 3 or 4 days. You know, it could be a simple solution or bigger picture. You're looking at that retaining wall that, I don't know, who was it? Maybe your grandpa helped build it with his own hands and you want to keep it forever, but you can see it's about to collapse. They do all kinds of stuff. Excavation, water features. You can find them online and find out why they keep getting the return business and referrals from their clients. LandscapeEdmonton.ca is where you'll find Eden Landscaping. And we will be hitting the road this weekend in our Ram 1500 Longhorn edition. I'm absolutely loving it. It's got that crew cab, which means a ton of room for our little guy in the back. We got the dogs in the back and still room to carry what we need in the bed of that truck. It's a truck that fits our needs as a family. Of course, every family or every person's needs are different, and that's why St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge works with you to find the perfect fit, not just at the point of sale, but also when it comes to the service side of their operations. You can find them under the sponsors tab on our website, ryanjesperson.com. Now, every Friday, before we strap in here and buckle up and get ready, is there anything else you needed to say before we sign off for the weekend? Because, once this ball's rolled, you don't want to step in the middle. Saturday night, we'll all be cheering to see the good guys win, and whatever your hockey dream looks like, we hope that it's achieved this weekend. And if you're not a hockey fan, that's cool, too. We can maybe set aside some time next week to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. I'm just keeping it real here. Every Friday, our friends at Local Environment. Was that a little dismissive?
You took a deep breath like if you're not a hockey fan, we need to chat.
Well, I was trying to decide between that's okay, we'll carve some, and what's wrong with you. But I decided to go with the more positive one. Our friends at Local Environmental every Friday give us a chance to blow off a little bit of steam, They give us a chance to sort of tap into some of the news cycle or maybe just something you see around you and to comment through this big bullhorn. These are emails that we've received to talk at ryanjesperson.com. It's a Friday tradition we call Trash Talk. All right, this one from Stephanie, who says, I love Stephanie. Dear Ryan, on the subject of Jagmeet Singh and politicians being held responsible for actions in person, in broad daylight, on our city streets and in our neighborhoods, let me be clear. I think all elected officials and those running for office should have their feet held to the fire. For sure, they should and do have to answer for the decisions, their opinions. They should have to face the public. They should have to face scrutiny. They should see the faces of the people they affect with their choices. They should be, at times, made to feel uncomfortable when faced with the raw emotions of the folks who disagree with them. They should be made to feel the full extent of what they've created, whether that be anger or frustration. But make no mistake, what happened to Jagmeet Singh on the streets of Peterborough, Ontario this week was disgusting. I'm a conservative. I'm a proud woman of faith. I'm opinionated. I'm a mother who leaned in and supported the Freedom Convoy at times in the beginning, although the length of that standoff made me feel uncomfortable. I believe in free speech, less government oversight, and the power of the people. What concerns me is the tone and the behavior of the people who clearly have issues with Mr. Singh and how they went about voicing those concerns. Politicians need to be able to walk the streets and not face abuse, ridicule, and I know it didn't come to this time, but violence. I can see a time in the future when elected officials simply opt to stay home or stay in their offices out of fear for the public, when security or bulletproof glass separates us from each other when we're debating. This is not the Canada I want for my children. This is not the Canada I grew up in. This is not how we treat human beings, no matter our differences. My stomach turned when I watched the video on your show yesterday, and I felt for Mr. Singh, even though I don't agree with his policies. Less division, more debate, safe debate, open debate, and respect for each other. We won the life lottery, being born or having moved to live permanently here in Canada, and we're pissing it away, all for the reward of what? And I told you so? Stop acting like kids, stop pretending to be mercenaries in the streets, and let people live their lives free of fear. Full stop. That from Stephanie. I love that one. How about this from Leland? Leland says, I'm one of those non-hyphenated conservatives that Jean Charest talked about in the leadership debate this week. I was there for what it's worth. But I have to say, I walked out of that room with less confidence, not more, in the future of the party. I know I should expect some sniping and some toe-to-toe moments, and that's fine. Actually, that's one of the best parts of a debate, but I do feel like points are being scored for the wrong stuff. While a lot of the comments closer to bang on are being met with silence or very little enthusiasm. I fear we're taking a couple options for leader that could be decent and give us a fighting chance in the next election and tossing them out in favor of a soundbite factory that may be great at selling memberships but might not be so great at actually running a government. And I hate to see it after these past few performances during federal elections. That from Leland. Monica says, so Brian Jean and his team believe that Jason Kenney's team is up to its old shadiness again, allegedly purchasing thousands of memberships with just a few credit cards so the leadership review can be stacked in the Premier's favor. Count me among the hundreds of thousands of Albertans who will have no problem believing we can trust the integrity of this leadership review about as much as we can trust the integrity of the man being reviewed, which is about as much as I can trust my 8-year-old to stick to fruits and vegetables and not candy when he's in charge of snack time, which is not a lot. Yet we all sit here and watch. We trust the process. We cross our fingers for checks and balances. Really? It makes a person want to just stop caring, which is what they want, which is why I won't. Have a great weekend, Real Talkers. That from Monica. Love it. Coming up early next week, we're going to get back to news of the day. This is the news that we know that you're expecting on Real Talk. We're going to talk to Kevin Royal, who's sending $1 million worth of emergency aid equipment over to Ukraine. Plus, we're going to get into other stories that you're paying attention to, updates on the news that matters most so you can have real talk with your friends, informed, opinionated talk that moves the dial. Have a safe weekend. Thanks for participating. Send us an email anytime to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and one love.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, technical producer John Hicks, managing director Josh Dunford, account coordinator Lawrence Sterlego, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is the flagship property of Relay Communications Group Incorporated. All rights reserved. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.